Hey guys, welcome back to another Math with Max and Rocky. I would bring them out, but they're both like super asleep right now. Rocky's asleep in his kennel and Max is asleep right here. Let me see if Max will get up. Maxie, come here. Come here. Oh, there he is. You see him? Yay! He woke up just for me. You want to say hi? You want to say hi? Okay. Rocky just woke up too. You're going to say hi too? Oh, say hi. Say hi. Say hi, everybody. Yes. Okay, go play. Go over there. Okay, so they woke up just for you guys. They're going to be right here playing. All right, so you should have a sheet of paper. Ugh, they spit on my paper. That looks like this. It should say fraction rules, and then it has 3 questions. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be actually a writing center. Okay, just ignore my hair. It's a little bit crazy. So you have 3 questions, and I'm going to talk to you about what I expect to see on those questions. So this will be considered a writing grade, and then remember, all writing grades also go to Miss Oviedo, another writing grade as well. So make sure that your sentences are clear, they make sense. You start with a capital letter, you end with punctuation. These are all things that you learn in 3rd, 4th, 2nd, 1st grade even, I would say. So I expect to see them in 5th grade, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and let you read the first question in your head. It should say, how or when do you know that you need to find the LCM, which stands for least common multiple, when adding or subtracting fractions? So let's just talk about that for a second. So here I provided 2 different fraction equations that I want you to focus on. So we have 3/5 minus 7/9, and at the bottom we have 3/5 minus 7/5. So this one down here is probably more like one that you've seen in the past, maybe in 4th grade or even 3rd grade, where you have the same denominator. And these can be subtracted because they have the same denominator. So the denominator stays the same. However, on the top one, we know that it cannot, because the amount of total pieces that are in each of these is different, and I need to make it so that each piece is equal to one another. I think I showed you this when we were first trying to add and subtract fractions, and remember when we subtracted from the whole number, we're talking about a whole pie. If you take the pie out of the oven, how many pieces are in there? That would make your denominator, right? So how do I know when I need to find my LCM? Well, obviously we know that if we have different denominators, we need to find our LCM. So what I want you to do is come up with a couple sentences that will explain to someone. And remember, whenever we're writing, we want to write as if we're writing to an alien, right? Somebody who has no idea what we're talking about. So we need to be very clear in our writing. We need to use vocabulary. We need to use details. We're not just going to say, we do it because we have to. Okay, that's not going to help the person that's trying to learn how to add and subtract fractions. Okay, that would not be considered helpful. So just make sure that your sentences are very clear. I want at least 2 sentences. I would go with 2 sentences. That'd probably be the best bet. And again, make sure your punctuation is clear. So how do we know, how or when do you know that you need to find the LCM when adding or subtracting fractions? Okay, that's your first question. So it's time for you to pause the video. You need to write your 2 sentences, and when you're ready, you'll come back for the second one. So pause it right now. Okay. So if you unpaused it right now, you should be ready to work on the second problem right now, which is how or when do you know when to simplify a fraction? Okay, this is when we already have a final answer. A lot of y'all learned this the other day, or yeah, was it yesterday, when we added our fractions and subtracted our fraction task cards, and you saw that you got it wrong because you forgot to simplify your fraction. Simplifying your fraction is something that's going to come up on STAR, most definitely. So this is something we need to get into the habit of. We cannot just ignore it. It needs to get done, because more than likely you're going to have to simplify. That is one of the main things that they're going to be checking for, okay? They're not going to just leave the answer as it is. So I know I've said it a million times already, but we need to know how to simplify a fraction. So how do I know when? Okay, one of the main things I have always been telling you is you need to look at what numbers you have. So in this case, let's try to look at the one right here. We have 14 out of 20. So how do I know that these 2 fractions need to be simplified? Well, first of all, I've been telling you that if both numbers are even, they can definitely be simplified, because that means that they definitely have a 2 in common as a factor, right? Something times 2 has to give me that number. So I know for sure that they have at least a 2. At least a 2. However, that might not be the GCF. Remember, the GCF is the greatest number that they have in common. So I'm not saying that it's only a 2. Sometimes it's a greater number. Sometimes they have a bigger GCF in common. It's your job to make your factor rainbows to figure out what number that is, okay? Now, some of you are still thinking that the only way to simplify is when you only have even numbers. That's not the case, okay? For example, 9/12. 9 is not an even number, but it can be simplified because I know that 3, 6, 9, and then 12, which means that this could be simplified down to 3/4. And another one that I wanted to mention right now was just a good example that I was showing people when they were doing their writings was 7 out of 21. So for example, if you have 7 out of 21, okay? Yeah, 7 is a prime number, so you might be noticing that. 7 is a prime number. However, that doesn't mean that it cannot be simplified. 7 is a multiple of 21. So if I were to do my rainbow for 7 and 21, the GCF would not be a 1, just because 7 is a prime number. The GCF would be a 7. 1 and 7, and then 1 and, let me show you the rainbows, that way you can see. 1 and 7, and then for 21, I would have 3 and 7, which tells me that I should be dividing both of these by 7. So if I were to divide 7 by 7, that would give me a 1. And if I were to divide 21 by 3, then that would give me a 7. So 7 out of 21 can be simplified to 1/7. So don't just automatically assume, oh, top number is odd or top number is prime and I can't simplify. That's not the case, okay? We have 2 ways we know that we can simplify. And to be perfectly honest, we should always be simplifying. Always, always, always. Even if you're not sure, even if you already know that it can't be simplified, we should be checking anyway because we just need to. We need to make sure. And we got to make sure we get those answers right. So lots of different ways that we can tell. We know that we have 2 evens. Just because it's odd doesn't mean it can't be simplified. We still got to do our rainbows to get our GCF. And the same thing, don't automatically assume that just because it's a prime number up top that it can't be simplified. We still need to check. And again, do our rainbows, do our GCF, and divide. So at this time, I want you to pause the video again, answer question number 2. Like I said before, I need at least 2 good sentences. So go ahead and do that, pause the video, and when you're ready, you can come back for question number 3. All right, so you've unpaused the video, you're ready for question number 3. The third question says, how or when do you know when to fix an improper fraction? So before we even begin that, what is an improper fraction? If you don't remember, you should be turning in your journal. We know that an improper fraction is when you have a numerator greater than your denominator, right? So I've given you 2 examples here. Okay, one of these has an improper fraction and one does not. So if you remember what improper fraction, you should be saying that this one is improper because my numerator is greater than my denominator. And that's just not going to work. You can't have a mixed number and an improper fraction at the same time. So how do you know? So again, we know because our numerator is greater than our denominator. And how do we fix it? Well, go to your notes for improper fractions. And we talked about this today also. Well, I guess today would be your yesterday on exactly how to fix something like this. So on question number 3, how or when do you know when to fix an improper fraction? And also, so make sure you tell me how to fix it and how do you know when. And then also on number 2, make sure you're explaining to me how to simplify a fraction as well. Not just telling me to simplify it because of the 2 reasons we talked about. Also tell me how to. That should give you your 2 sentences for those 2. Okay? And that's all you're doing on this one. But again, it is going to be taken as a writing grade. Writing grade for me and then a writing grade for Miss Oviedo. So make sure your sentences make sense. If you're not making sense, you're going to do a redo. You already know that. Okay? And then make sure you get the rest of your centers done. All right? Bye, guys.